Hello and welcome back. I'm Mr. Luis, and in today's psychology lesson, we're diving into another fascinating core study, this time by Pozzulo and colleagues in 2011. This research looks at something incredibly important: how well children can act as eyewitnesses in legal situations, especially during police lineups. Let's get into it. Our memory doesn't work like a perfect computer. Sometimes it can be distorted, especially after an event has already happened. That's where things like false memories come in, memories that feel real but aren't accurate. Imagine asking someone how fast a car was going when it smashed into another car versus when it hit another car. Just changing that one word can affect their answer. This idea was originally studied by Loftus and Palmer in 1974, and it plays a big role in understanding memory distortion. Pozzulo and her team were especially interested in how children remember things. In some cases, a child may be the only witness to a crime. That means the legal system must rely on their memory. But are children really reliable witnesses? That's what this study explored. In the past, Pozzulo and Lindsay found that children were less likely than adults to say "I don't know" when they were unsure. This can lead to more mistakes. One common way police test eyewitnesses is with a lineup, where a witness tries to pick out the criminal from a group of people. But this system has its flaws. For example, if the real culprit isn't actually in the lineup, a child might still feel pressured to choose someone. When this happens, they might give a false positive response, identifying someone innocent as the criminal. The researchers believe that children might make more errors than adults in lineups due to social pressure. Maybe they feel they must choose someone, maybe they see the police officer as an authority figure they want to please, or maybe they're just afraid of getting into trouble if they don't choose anyone. All of these social influences can shape their answers. To explore this, Pozzulo et al. Created 4 predictions. First, they expected that children would be just as good as adults at identifying cartoon characters in lineups where the culprit is present. Second, they thought children would perform worse than adults at identifying human faces in those same conditions. Third, they believed children would be worse than adults at rejecting cartoon characters in a lineup where the real culprit wasn't there. And finally, they expected children would also struggle more than adults at rejecting human faces in these target-absent lineups. The study used a laboratory experiment. This means it was done in a controlled setting, not a real police station. There were 3 main independent variables: the age of the participants, children versus adults, the type of lineup, target present versus target absent, and how familiar the faces were, cartoons versus real humans. Cartoon faces are easy to recognize and don't require much thinking. Human faces, on the other hand, are less familiar to children and take more effort to remember. There were 59 child participants aged 4 to 7 years and 53 adults aged 17 to 30. The children were recruited from private schools in Canada, while the adults were university students. To make sure the children were familiar with the cartoons used in the study, the researchers chose Dora the Explorer and Go, Diego, Go. Each participant watched short video clips of either cartoon or human characters. For example, Dora was shown talking to the camera, and Diego was shown putting on gloves. The human videos showed a woman brushing her hair and a man putting on a coat. After watching the clips, the participants were shown a lineup of faces and asked to identify the person they saw, or say they weren't there. The lineups either included the correct target, target present, or didn't, target absent. Every lineup also included a blank silhouette, so participants could say that the culprit was not there. The positions of the faces were randomized and counterbalanced to avoid bias. Everything was shown on a laptop screen. Children responded by pointing at the photo, and their answers were recorded. Adults wrote their answers down. To help the children feel comfortable, the researchers visited their school ahead of time and gave them crafts to build trust. The experimenters were also dressed in smart, casual clothes to appear professional but friendly, not intimidating. Now let's talk about the results. As expected, children did very well when identifying cartoon characters, almost 100% accuracy, just like the adults. This suggests their memory worked just fine when the task was simple. However, when asked to identify human faces or reject faces in target-absent lineups, children made more mistakes than adults. They were more likely to choose someone, even when the correct answer was to choose no one. This shows us something powerful. Children's errors in these lineups weren't due to poor memory. They remembered what the characters looked like. The problem was social pressure. They felt they had to pick someone, even if they weren't sure. This creates serious issues in real courtrooms, where a child might accidentally identify the wrong person. The study has important applications. It shows that we need to reduce the social pressure children feel when giving testimony. We also need to make sure children are given the option to say, "I don't know," without fear of punishment or disappointment. Of course, the study had limitations. Because it was a lab experiment, the situation didn't feel like a real-life crime. That means we can't be totally sure that the same results would happen in a real courtroom. This affects the ecological validity, but the researchers controlled for other issues like demand characteristics by not telling the participants the true aim of the study. Ethically, the study was very well done. Parents gave consent, the children were kept safe and calm, and they had the right to withdraw at any time. This is a great example of how to do responsible research with young participants. To sum it all up, Pozzulo et al. Found that children can remember faces well, especially cartoons. But they are more likely than adults to make errors in lineups when the suspect isn't there. These errors come from social factors, not memory problems. The study helps us understand how to make lineups more reliable, especially when children are involved. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next psychology lesson.